Hey, how's it going? Oh, hope you're doing all right. just a quick heads up. I'm coming off of a righteous sinus infection. I'd say I'm about 80% over it. So I feel a whole lot better than I did a week ago. But we'll be like during our 2-minute pauses, give a comment. I've got a whole box of Kleenexes here to kind of keep me alive. So just so you know, sounds a little weird. Energy may not be the same, but we're all good. We're all good. Well, good. Eliza, last week I thought I was feeling better. So Tuesday morning last week, I wasn't feeling so hot, but then during the live stream on Tuesday night, I felt a little better. Wednesday morning, I felt better. And then I crashed something ferocious, just awful. And so my wife and I both had it. We went to the doctor. They gave us some antibiotics and, of course, modern pharmaceuticals, right? But yeah, it's been a ride. It's been a ride. Hey, Anna, hey there. If it feels any better, I'm also stuffing my face with tissues right now. Yeah, it's kind of that year, right? It's that time of year. And hey, folks, any dialogue gets the light bulbs. I just like what I do, and I appreciate you guys being here and doing this with me. Hey, so let's go ahead and play. What are we going to talk about? Well, here's the thing. If you remember last week, when I sounded worse, I guess, we talked about how religion sort of had some issues with business because business was replacing religion as the nexus of power. Power protects power. I'm telling you, power protects power. And power wants to retain power. And religion was realizing that business was replacing it in terms of where the power structures lied. And so we talked about that last week. But now this week, we get to see the most amazing magic act ever. Right? Yeah, Eliza, totally. Trump and Elon. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. You're talking about the two most powerful people in the world collaborating, okay? And one supports the other and so forth. Power protects power. Okay, so we're going to see this cool-ass magic act for the first part of our lecture. Well, what do I mean by this? Well, we're going to talk about the Protestant work ethic as described. Oh, and by the way, there was a light bulb there. Sorry about that, Eliza. So the Protestant work ethic as described by Max Weber, okay? Now, this is a famous reading. It's a famous theory. Not everyone agrees with it. I see some alignment. I tend to be a little bit more Team Weber. Other people are less Team Weber. You get to decide where you are, okay? So Weber, and I'm going to make a posit to you, okay? So let me make a posit to you real quick. And you don't have to agree with the posit. Remember, a posit is just a starting point for a discussion. All right. My posit is the reason that we feel the way we do in the West, United States in particular, about work and welfare and stick-to-itiveness and pull yourself up by your bootstraps and so on and so forth, is because of the Protestant work ethic. That's my posit. So now let's explore this. Okay, so let's do a little bit of context here. All right, Weber was talking about the Calvinists. They were a Protestant sect. I guess they're still around, I suppose. But Calvinists were Protestant Protestant sect that basically said, listen, we want to go to heaven. We want to go to heaven. And so every waking moment, as it says up here, every waking moment is dedicated to ensuring one's election, getting into heaven. No, not leisure and enjoyment, not only activity serves to increase the glory of God according to the definite manifestations of his will. Okay, so let's just put this in quick English. It basically says, listen, you're not on this earth for long. You're not on this earth for long. And so you've got one job. You've got one job. Get into heaven. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole predestination, so on and so forth about that and so on and so forth. It's, chicken before the egg. I'm not going to get into that. The point is they wanted to get into heaven. Okay. All right. What's that have to do with business? Just wait. You'll see. All right. So, first thing to get into heaven, laziness is out. No laziness. Waste of time is thus the first and most, and in principle, deadliest of sins. The span of life is infinitely short and precious to make sure of one's own election, whether or not you're going to heaven. Loss of time through sociability, idle talk, luxury, even more sleep than is necessary. 6 to most 8 hours. Absolute moral condemnation. Okay, so now think about this for a moment, guys. Chime in if you like. We'll get some light bulbs. Have your parents or grandparents ever chastised you for sleeping in too late? Do they chastise you for staying up late at night and then sleeping until 11 a.m. or later? Do they ever give you a hard time for spending 4 or 5 hours? Tyler, you're screwed. Do they ever give you a hard time for spending 4 or 5 hours on a computer game, right? Or on a console or something like that? Have your grandparents or anybody ever said, it's a beautiful day outside, go off and do something, or your parents? Now, I have to admit, this is not so much the case anymore because it's generational, but I'm old. And so this is crap I heard from my father and my grandparents all the time. Eliza says, according to this definition, I'm quite the sinner, right? Yeah, I know, right? Actually, I make a case in my Beyond Time Management series that the more effective you are at time management, the more time you can dedicate to being lazy, which is totally not in keeping with this, right? Okay, so that's the first thing. No laziness. Next one. To the Calvinists, your job was a calling, okay? Now, a job is a job is a job. You go to KSL, you find a job, you talk to a friend, they get you on with, Dutch Bros or whatever. It's a job. It pays the bills. Not to the Calvinists. They believed that this was a way that you could worship, was through your work. What God demands is not labor in itself, but the rational labor in a calling. In Puritan concept of calling, the emphasis is always placed on this methodical character of worldly asceticism, not, going on. Okay, so we're going to come back to asceticism. So let asceticism aside for a moment. What I want you to focus on right now is that if you call in sick, this has eternal ramifications. All right? And so, because it's a calling. It's not just a job, it's a calling. All right? Going on, even the wealthy shall not eat without working, for even though they do not need to labor to support their own needs, there is God's commandment which they, like the poor, must obey. For everyone, without exception, God's providence has prepared a calling, which he should profess and in which he should labor. It is a direct consequence of the divine scheme of things. Guys, this should be mind-blowing. I mean, it should be mind-blowing. Who am I to tell you what it should or shouldn't do to your psyche, right? The point is, this is serious mojo, right? This is saying that everyone should work. It's not a question of do you need the money. Everyone should work. The rich, the poor, the young, the old, everyone should work because that's how you worship. All right, let's keep going. Continuing on with this, the differentiation of men into the classes and occupations established through historical development become for Luther, as we have seen, a direct result of divine will. The perseverance of the individual to the place and within the limits God has assigned to him was a religious duty. Okay, now this is significant. Let me just give you Lon's translation of what was just said here. It's not just that it's a calling. It's that you are called to this specific job. Now, this is going to matter here in a moment, okay? And it doesn't matter what the job is, whether you are a janitor or an electrician or a physician or an architect or a police officer or a teacher. It doesn't matter. It is a divine calling, and that is your role. And you should find fulfillment in that role. You shouldn't look at other jobs and say, gee, I wish I had that. You don't do that. This is the calling that God has set aside for you. So this is going to matter here in a little bit. All right, let's keep going. I told you we were going to come back to asceticism, right? Asceticism, ascetic, means no fancy bling, right? You live a simple life. You have one jacket, one pair of shoes, and you don't live ostentatiously and all that stuff, right? Okay. The worldly Protestant asceticism acted powerfully against the spontaneous enjoyment of possessions. It restricted consumptions, especially of luxuries. Okay, essentially, don't spend your money on crap you don't need. And need, meaning if it doesn't have a practical use to help you do your job, your divine calling, you don't need it. All right? This whole studio is full of stuff that I don't need. Oh my gosh, I could tell you stories. The way I discover how to do things is I spend money on it and then find out that that's not what I needed, and then buy something else and then find out that's not what I needed. So I have a whole full of stuff. You don't care. All right? Point is, you don't go off buying luxuries and getting your nails done and your hair done and your beard all coiffed. I don't know what the word is for beard. I know you get it barbered. There you go, barbered. All right. You're not to show off. All right. So, going on with the ascetic and humble lifestyle, wealth is thus bad ethically only insofar it is a temptation to idleness and sinful enjoyment of life. And its acquisition is bad only when it is with the purpose of later living merrily and without care. So, earning money is dope. You can totally earn money. Bring it on in, baby. Okay? However, it is only cool if you are intending to apply it in the right ways. We're going to talk about what that is pretty soon. It is not with the idea of, I want to retire. So for example, Lon, me, this dude right here, I want to retire when I'm like 70 years old. I know, if I knew what I were doing, I would have retired at 60, but that's not the way it is. So I want to retire at 70. Well, what does it mean to retire at 70? It means after that, I don't want to have to work in order to do the things I want to do. I'll still do Nutshell Brainery. I'll still do lots of other things, but it's just for fun, right? Protestant work ethic says that's no good, okay? You should not aim for a day in which you do not have to work, all right? So that's where they land there. All right. So what do you do then with all this money? So think about it for a moment, okay? What we've got is a situation in which we are not lazy, so we are working our asses off. We take our jobs really seriously because they're callings, and we don't go off spending money on frivolities, and we are always working no matter what. We are not saving to one day not work. What's going to happen? You're going to earn a lot of money, and you're not going to spend it. Remember? Because you can't go off and buy the Maserati. So what's going to happen? What do you do with that money? You invest it. Earning and investing as a performance of duty and a calling is not only morally permissible, it is actually enjoined. Enjoined meaning it's required. Investing is a commandment. Put a pin in that. The parable of the servant who was rejected because he did not increase the talent which was entrusted to him seemed to say so directly. Okay, story time. All right, story time. So this is referring to a Bible parable, all right? I'm going to go ahead and tell you the parable. I'm going to put it in modern terms, just because. But this is what it's saying, all right? All right, so there's this really rich dude, right? The lord of the manor. He's mega rich. And he wants to basically go off and take a year-long sabbatical. He wants to leave for a year. He's going to go off and, smoke peyote or whatever, and then do a walkabout in Australia, climb Mount Everest. I don't know. I don't know what rich people do for a year sabbatical. Anyway, he's gone for a year. And he has 3 financial managers. And he says, okay, listen, I'm going to peace out here and be incommunicado. So I need to give you guys all my money to manage, all right? So he gives one person, $10 million and says, here, you manage the $10 million. Gives another person $5 million and says, you take care of the $5 million. And then gives his third financial manager $1 million. So you take care of this $1 million. And then he, gets out of Dodge. All right. So the first guy with the $10 million, he says, well, I'll be damned if he comes back in a year and is not pleased with my performance. So he invests the money. And over the span of a year, he doubles it. That $10 million becomes $20 million. That's a pretty good investment. And the guy with $5 million says, well, I'm no dummy. I know my job. So he invests his $5 million and turns it into 10. Well, the guy with $1 million, he says, oh, gosh, I'd sure hate to lose this money. It'd look really bad if he came back and, I give him $1.30, right? So he just sits on the money in a no interest account. It's just sitting there. So the Lord comes back. He has a nice tan. He's thin, right? And, has a monkey on his shoulder. Nobody asks about the monkey because that's weird. And so he says to the first guy, all right, I gave you $10 million. What'd you do? He says, well, I turned it into $20 million. And he says, fantastic. You're awesome. You're the man. Here's your reward. And it's an uber-ass reward. Okay, now this is important, so hold on. Goes on to the second guy who he gave $5 million to. What'd you do? I turned it into $10 million. Fantastic. Awesome. Gives him the very same uber-ass reward as the guy who doubled and made $20 million. It's not important how much he made in the return. What's important is that he measured to the scope of his responsibility. This is important. This is why the Calvinists say the janitor is just as important as the doctor, and they're going to get the same reward. Because if you step up to the scope of your responsibility, that's what the Lord of the Manor cares about. All right. Goes off to the guy with 1 million. And the guy with 1 million said, well, I sure didn't want to lose this. So here it is, all accounted for, every penny, $1 million. And the Lord says, you don't understand your job very well. You're a financial manager. You're supposed to manage my finances. This is how we make, you're gone. And he's fired. He's kicked out. Doesn't even give him a reference. Okay. So what's the point here? The point is, this is a parable from the Bible, ostensibly from Jesus Christ. Therefore, investing is a commandment. Now, how does capitalism work, friends? Capitalism works on investing. You work hard, you're not lazy, you don't shirk your responsibility, you save your money, you invest it. That's capitalism. So according to Weber, that's all kind of rooted in this. Okay, let's keep going. So here's the outcome. With the limitations of consumption, don't spend it, is combined with this release of acquisitive activity, go ahead and work your butt off to get money, the inevitable practical result is obvious: accumulation of capital through ascetic compulsion to save. The restraints which were imposed upon the consumption of wealth naturally serve to increase it by making possible the productive investment of capital. Capitalism. There's a reason it's called capitalism, because it's all based on capital through this. Okay? So, I am now going to take you through some what I feel are modern examples of this idea at play and at this idea being challenged. I would love to see some examples in the chat there from your own side, and we'll give some moments and so forth. But this is all theory so far. Let's look at some examples. All right? To wish to be poor. Now, I won't go ahead and read this. The whole point is the idea of being poor or even wishing to be poor was abhorrent to the capitalists. All right? I mean, to the Calvinists. All right. So with that, let me tell you a story. There's this video. I can't show the video. That's all right, because the sound quality of the video is really poor. It's unfortunate. But it's this interviewer interviewing this guy named Mike Adams. He's the guy sitting over on the edge there with his dog. Mike Adams makes about $700 a week, working 2 to 3 hours a day. He has been doing this for 20 years. Okay? He's a panhandler. Well, check this out. Here's the interview. The interviewer says, what do you do when people tell you, when people ask you, why don't you get a job? Mike Adams, I've got one. I'm a traveler. So you consider this your job? Damn right. Do you want to do anything else? Flip no. Okay, that's kind of interesting. He considers this his job. The interview goes on. He says, would you say that you're a professional panhandler? Mike Adams, working on it. You've got to improve? You've got to do more? Well, yeah. Don't you improve at your job? Yeah, says the interviewer. I improve at my job. So here's the thing I want to ask you. Is panhandling a job? Is panhandling a job? Let's play with that idea. Yes or no, and explain your yes or no. By the way, you can answer yes and give an answer, and then you can answer no and give an answer because there's no answer. You can be on both sides of this fence, all right? Can panhandling be considered a job? And now we're going to take a 2-minute nose blow break. Okay, fantastic. Let's go ahead and start here. So Anna says, and let's go ahead and get this, and we're gonna. Oh, which one should we do today? Let's do some sci-fi. Anna says, yes, it makes money depending on how much money would be considered either a side hustle or a job. But if it pays bills, yeah, it's a job. Okay, I agree. Now, let me even poke at that just a little bit, Anna. First of all, whether it, pays money or not. Why does something need to pay money to be a job? Because there's lots of people who do intense volunteer work. And in fact, there are whole sectors of the economy that run on volunteers because of market failures. And these people work their asses off and they're not paid a dime. In fact, when my wife was going through clinicals, my daughter is going through clinicals right now. So my wife and daughter, they are paying the hospital for the privilege of working for them for 2 years so that they can say they have clinicals. Now, you can say that's training, yes, but trust me, you only need 3-6 months of training. The other year and a half is cake for the hospitals. Why is money something that should define a job? Just a thought, all right? And keep going with the ideas here. Let's see. Tyler says, I would say yes. From all that we have learned, there is a trade of service, and the person who gives in some form satisfaction while the panhandler gets money. And the panhandler is also taking their time and effort in making and is entrepreneurial. Okay, Tyler, I emphatically agree with you. There is an exchange going on here, and it is a completely voluntary exchange. One is providing a service, the other is receiving a service, and one is giving money in exchange for the service, the other is receiving the money. Okay. And furthermore, it's a pretty darn market accurate service because the giver of the money gets to decide the value. You know, the panhandler doesn't set the prices. The customer sets the prices. That's pretty interesting, which means the panhandler needs to be entrepreneurial about how and where they panhandle, what kind of message, what they're wearing, and so on and so forth. There's a lot going on in this industry. Eliza says, I feel like it's not because it's a donation of some kind like GoFundMe. Okay, this is one of my favorite observations, right? So, Eliza, you're right. You're right. It's just a donation. Now, once again, going back to the exchange of services, we donate because we want to feel good and feel like we're making a difference. So we are getting something in exchange. But let's set that aside for a moment. You're bringing up a really interesting point. Why is panhandling, I'm going to just make a gross generalization. I'm going to say a gross generalized statement. I am not saying that I am reflecting my beliefs or your beliefs. I'm just saying something in general. Why is panhandling considered gross, dirty, and dishonest, where GoFundMe is totally awesome and cool? It's because GoFundMe is online and has pretty colors. It's the same practice. Panhandling, GoFundMe is exactly the same process. But for some reason, when that request for money comes over a screen versus a piece of cardboard, we internalize the request differently. I would say this is because of the Protestant work ethic. We perceive one as lazy, and the other we perceive the panhandler as lazy when it's not, and we perceive the GoFundMe as an entrepreneurial way of solving a problem. Just a thought. Just a thought. Let's see. Tyler goes on to say, go. Excuse me. This is good. Also has a tax man, right? Yeah, they pay taxes. They pay taxes. Excuse me. Yeah, it's on film for all the world to see now. Okay. Really good conversation. Now I want to play with this for a moment. So check this out. When I was 16 years old, I hitchhiked and juggled my way through Europe with my best friend. It's my friend on the top and me on the bottom. We juggled on the streets for food. We starved. Over there, it's called busking, and it's illegal, and we were rousted out a few times. Here, it's called street performing panhandling, and sometimes you can get a license for it. Oftentimes, these people don't have a permit to do it, right? Not a license, a permit. So now here's the thing. You're looking at those two pictures, and you're hearing that story, and I'm just going to tell you. You're thinking, oh, that's cool as crap. That's pretty awesome. These two 15-year-old kids hitchhiking through Europe, juggling. I mean, white privilege. Yeah, it was. It was. That's panhandling. Isn't it something that when some young, healthy, white male Americans do something, it's considered, oh, well, boy, weren't you privileged to be able to do that? Whereas when somebody on the corner is doing it, it's like, get a job. I'm just saying, it's the context and so on and so forth, right? I find it fascinating. Okay. Okay, that's the first part of today. We have a second part, but here's 2 quotes. Okay. Let's see. So, Eliza, you sound like you lived in a movie. It was actually pretty darn cool, but it was also, Eliza, if I'm being really honest, it was really, really, really difficult, and it strained and tested our friendship more than anything else in the world. Okay? I've been married for 35 years. I served an LDS mission and had companions. I know what interpersonal conflict is. But this is my brother from another mother, and this really tested us because every single day we were in some sort of jeopardy, and things get scary then. But we came out of it flying colors. We're the bestest of friends. I named my firstborn after him, John. I named my firstborn after him. Okay, couple of cool quotes about this before we go on to part 2. First, Herman Melville, author of Moby Dick. Toil is man's allotment, toil of brain or toil of hands, or a grief that is more than either, the grief and sin of idleness. Which brings me to my quote. When I go through cashier lines, I like to flirt with the cashier because that's a hard job, and you shouldn't have to deal with surly SOB customers all the time. So I have a favorite spiel. I say, how's the day going? And they go, oh, it's going all right. I say, how long have you been on shift? And, oh, well, I started this time, or I have this much left. And has it been busy today? Okay. And I say, well, you know what? The only thing worse than having a job is not having a job. And my friends, I can tell you from personal experience that the only thing worse than having a job is not having a job. It messes with you at a level that cannot be quantified. So work is what we're meant to do, I feel like. This is old man talking. I'm not a boomer, but I'm 1 year off a boomer. Okay, so we need to recognize that. All right. Part 2. Let's go on. We're doing well. We're going to be fine. Okay, so religion has clearly embraced business, as you can well see. Whereas in the past, business and religion, they were not simpatico, and religion tried to push back. Now they're doing just great. Yeah, boomer adjacent. That's totally what I am. You know, when I look at my behaviors and my attitudes and so on and so forth, I'd say I'm about 70% Gen Xer. And when I look at the data and so forth, but I have about 30% boomer in me, I think. But yeah, I'm very Gen X. I like my Gen X side better, but my boomer side keeps me out of trouble. Okay, let's keep going. A major social revolution took place. Everyone, I need you to come to center. Look at me. Let's pause for a moment. I need you to prepare to break your brain. I am going to explain some things that took place in this economic revolution that will be very, very difficult for you to comprehend. But once you do, you're going to go, oh, okay? So just kind of bring it all in for just a moment. All right. Let's do this. Hey, NFT. or crypto. I don't care which one. They're two different things. An NFT and crypto are clearly two different things, but they're tangential, right? Is that real? Let's take 2 minutes. Give me your thought on either NFTs or crypto and tell me whether or not they are real. This will lead into this economic revolution. So here comes our 2 minutes. Okay, I'm actually really pleased at these comments. All right. So first of all, let's get our first one here, and in the not too distant future, next Sunday AD. All right, because you're saying the same sort of thing, but the thing that you're saying is really important. Okay, so check this out. The first one was Anna. Yes and no. It can either be seen nor it can neither be seen nor feel it, nor express it, but it has some value in some form, right? Okay, everyone, and you're all seeing it, so you understand it, but I want to call this out. Just because it doesn't exist doesn't mean it doesn't have value. Value is a totally nebulous, abstract. Word of the day is abstract. And so something doesn't necessarily need to exist to have value. All right, continuing on, we have Eliza says, it really depends on your definition of real. But I would say, yes, it might not be tangible, but not all things are tangible. You see, Eliza's drinking from the same Kool-Aid, right? She's like, just because it doesn't exist doesn't mean it's not real. And lots of intangible things have value. So, yeah, totally. You guys are getting it. Tyler, yes and no, similar reasons to Anna. Got it. Zamara, let's see. It would depend on the purpose and action of the exchange. I would say that yes, because it can be considered as a currency and has value, or it can be used in trading for something else. Yes, if it is being used in some sort of exchange, the fact that it doesn't exist doesn't matter. All right? It has value. So the takeaway from this, guys, is the idea of abstract. Things can exist in the abstract, meaning it's an idea we made up, but because we made up the idea, it changes the nature of something real. The idea that we made up changes the nature of something real. Let me show you, all right? So, basically, I'm not going to read this whole darn thing. It says land, labor, and capital did not exist. Well, if we read the whole thing, it's basically saying, hey, capitalism couldn't really happen because land, labor, and capital did not exist. Well, now you'd be saying, what do you mean? Land has always existed, as in soil, right? And labor, work, has always existed, and capital has always existed, yes. However, they were not considered tradable commodities. I know this sounds weird, but the idea of exchanging, as Zamora says, exchanging and increasing wealth through land and labor, and this just wasn't even thought of, okay? I'm going to give you some modern examples to give you a little bit of empathy for these folks, right? We're not going to worry about this. So let's take abstract land, for example, all right? Take, for example, land. As late as the 14th or 15th century, there was no land, at least in the modern sense of freely saleable rent-producing property. There were lands, of course, estates, manors, and principalities, but these were emphatically not real estate to be bought and sold as occasion warranted. I mean, they were just huge tracts of land, Monty Python. And they were given by the king to these people and so on and so forth, but they were there to be managed, so they would grow crops on them and so forth, but the people who grew crops on them were the people who'd been there forever. They were the common lands. I mean, people have been farming and raising cattle and doing all that kind of crap on this planet for centuries and centuries and centuries, tens of thousands of years, and nobody ever owned the land, all right? Well, now, I'll give you an example. Up until recently, the idea of owning sunlight was ridiculous. If I said to you, you know what, it's a beautiful sunny day. I don't know if it is. This is a dark studio. It's a beautiful sunny day. Give me money. You'd be like, you don't own the sunlight. I mean, the very idea that somebody could own sunlight is ridiculous. No, we can get even weirder. A view. Think about it, guys. The value of a home, the value of a corner office suite is the view. The value of a hotel room is the view. Just being able to look in a certain direction and see a certain amount of space is an abstract idea, and yet it has value. If somebody puts something up in front of that view, they lose their shite, let me tell you. Okay, I know it's happened to me. I was the one building something. Anyway, the point is, there's all kinds of things that the idea of attaching a monetary value to it seems weird. Sunlight, we're now starting to wrap our minds around because you can get solar energy through sunlight, and in some countries and so forth, they consider it a health thing and so forth. A view, right? There's many, many, many things like this. And this is where land was originally. The idea that you could own land was really, really, really bizarre. All right. And how'd it happen? There's actually a really good movie. So you say my life's a movie. This is a good movie. It's called Open Range. Open Range with Kevin Costner and Robert Duvall. If you're into cowboy movies, it's actually a very, very good and realistic cowboy movie. It's all about what we are about to read here, okay? So I'll just tell you real quick. Robert Duvall, we're not even going to read it. I'm going to tell you the movie because that's more interesting than reading textbooks. So Robert Duvall and Kevin Costner, they're a couple of cattle herders. And they grow their cattle in one part of the country and they roam their cattle off to go to market somewhere else. And then they pick up some cattle and they bring it back. And that's what cattle ranchers do, right? America is America. You just drive your cattle across the country. There's nothing wrong. Well, until one day they're going across one season and somebody put up fences. Fences? What the hell are these fences? I mean, who decided that they could put up a fence and tell me I can't go there? I've been doing this for 18 generations, you understand. Well, the fence is put up by a Scotsman who was raising sheep. This is exactly what's in the reading. It's like the producers of this movie read the reading. And enclosed the land and said, that's my land for the sheep. And Robert Duvall and Kevin Costner, they're not having any of it, and they take their cattle on through, and the sheep herder loses his mind, and he starts killing their people, and it turns into a great big huge gunfight because it's a Western. But who decided they owned the land? It's not governments. It's not attorneys. The people who own the land are the people with the most guns. It's called larger naval diplomacy. All right? It was naval because who got to own the United States? Or who got to own the colonies? The person with the biggest navy. Who got to own South America? The person with the biggest navy. Portugal or Spain, and you know, who's going to go up north? Person with the biggest navy, you know, the French. Larger naval diplomacy. So whoever had the power and the guns could say, this is my land. And it's from that then lawyers came in and said, okay, this is your land, and then a legal precedent set. So I live on land and I have the deed to this land. But at some point, somebody just moved in and said, this is mine. And, well, it's just the way it went. Didn't Roosevelt have a bigger stick quote? Yes. So Roosevelt's quote, excellent point there, was, I talk with a soft voice, but I carry a big stick, which is, I'm going to ask you to do things, and I'm going to ask you nicely. And if you don't do it, I'm going to beat you over the head with my stick. Very, very apropos to this. Okay, so that's land. But now, guys, here's what happens. I'm not going to read this. We'll just do stories. All right, so we've got these families that for generation upon generation upon generation, for tens of thousands of years, this community has been farming this land. And somebody with a big gun comes up, makes a fence around the land, and says, that land's mine. I'm not making this up, all right? And the farmers are like, well, what the holy hell are we supposed to do? And they're like, well, there's no problem. You can keep farming the land. I didn't say you couldn't farm the land. I just said it's mine. Of course, you're going to pay rent. You're going to give me a share of your earnings because you are using my resource, the land, to produce your product. And you need to compensate me for the use of my resource in producing your product. Now, of course, if you don't want to do that, that's fine. You can go off and, work in a factory or something. We have this industrial revolution coming along. Go off and work in a factory. It's cool. You'll make more money. But But as it says in the reading here, and I'll get let's do a highlighter here. Since no factories were available, he could not, even if he wanted to, there were some factories, but he could not metamorphosize into a factory worker. Instead, he became the most miserable of all social classes, an agricultural proletariat. And where agriculture work was lacking, a beggar, sometimes a robber, usually a pauper. You see, back when everybody just used the land as a community, you could make ends meet and just live as a community. You didn't need to own anything. But now that you need to own land, well, now you're kind of screwed. My friends, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because the way it works in America is you got to own a home. Well, why do I need to own a home? Why do I need to own land? It's just the way it's done. This is how you build wealth. You need to own a home. And so you're going to spend the vast majority of your early life, first of all, trying to figure out how to get a home, how to afford a home. And then when you have a home, you're going to be home poor, house poor for 30 years. All because you're no longer part of a community called the family. You now have to strike out on your own. It's the same sort of thing. None of this is ancient history, folks. We still all do it. Okay, sounds like slavery for the farmer. It was emphatically so. Now, one of the things that we're going to talk about in a future lecture is I'm already poor and live at home. Yeah, Anna, I really feel for you. My kids are in the same boat because I don't know how they're going to make it. I really don't, because we have enclosed everything and made this poor class that cannot afford a home. I'm serious about this. I'm concerned as a father. Anyway, all right, get off my high horse. It sounds like slavery. You know what? We're going to talk about this more in the future, but there's different. Slavery is on a scale. Now, I do not want to be cavalier about the atrocious, egregious crime against humanity, which is slavery, which still exists today. With that understanding, it exists on a scale. Because a lot of people aren't slaves per se, but there is a heavy exploitation of need. So if you have somebody who is really hungry and is in dire situations and needs money and work really bad, they are going to put up with a whole lot more than somebody else because we are exploiting their need. And there's many populations that we exploit because of their need. It's not slavery, but it's pretty darn close. And that's what we're talking about here, exploitation of need. Okay, that's land. Same thing with labor. So check this out. I'll go ahead and get out of the way here so we can look at this. There were really only two ways that we figured out what you were going to do for work, all right? The first was called custom right here, which is, it's traditional for your family to do this work. So, for example, real world example, Schiffbauer, my last name, means shipbuilder in German. So, 3 guesses what my family did in the old world. So, everybody had a job. And in fact, in many communities, not all cultures, but in many cultures, last names were given as a way to count taxes. This is the taxes from the shipbuilder. These are the taxes from the tanner. These are the taxes from the copper miner, the cooper. These are the taxes from the smith. You ever wonder why there's so many smiths? Because there are a lot of smiths needed out there, all right? So many, many names are rooted in a profession because that's what their families did, and that's how taxes were counted up. Okay, so let's see. The next one was command. This is our slavery stuff, right, Anna? Strong-arm tactics, subjugating people under the whip, slavery, caste systems, and so forth. So really, in the early days, as in all of human history until about the 1800s, so throughout the vast majority of human history, work was done in one of two ways. That was the job your community gave you, and it even became your name, or you were a slave. Subjugated people, we have a bigger gun, work. Okay. But now something is happening, and this is what's revolutionary. And I mean revolutionary to the point where it kind of freaks them out. And that's this: market system, pursuing one's own monetary advantage. The idea that you can do whatever you want. Whatever earns the most money and you're interested in and you think there's a market for and you possess some competencies in that area, go ahead, do it. Nobody is keeping track. Nobody is saying we need 100 lawyers, we need 800 doctors, we need 3,000 electricians, we need 200 mechanics, and we need 18 jugglers. Nobody is keeping track. You just do whatever you want and let the market decide. Well, now, folks, this freaked people out, especially those in power. Those in power are easy to freak out. If you want to talk about that later, I'm happy to talk about it. Not in class. I'm actually going to make a video about it. Anyway, those in power were freaking out. So here's from the reading. It was this paradoxical, subtle, and difficult solution to the problem of survival that called forth the economist. For unlike the simplicity of custom and command, Schiffbauer or slave, it was not altogether obvious that with each man out only for his own gain, society could in fact endure. It was by no means clear that all the jobs of society, the dirty ones as well as the plush ones, would be done if custom and command no longer ruled the world. In other words, who's going to do the shite work, right? Who's going to do the crappy work? Who's going to do the dirty jobs? If you can do whatever you want to do, who are we going to pay to clean up our septic tanks? All right. Well, there's an answer to this. And it's actually an answer that, well, hell, you already know. We're going to do a 2-minute. I'm going to show you that you already know the answer. They didn't know the answer and they were freaking out. You know it. Here's the question. All right, and I'll put it in the chat here. What were your first few jobs and why did you do them? What were your first few jobs and why did you do them? I am going to guess that they were not your favorite jobs. I am going to guess that if somebody asked you to go back and do that job, you would not be too enthusiastic about doing it. I am going to guess that you are in college because you don't want to do that kind of work again. So then why did you do it in the first place? 2 minutes. Okay, let's check out your comments here, right? So we'll go back to the other side, but I want to connect what you said with this. So first of all, let's check this out. We have Anna, who says, did we ever do a third one? I don't think we did. Let's see. There we go. Anna says, first McDonald's, then a hostess at Red Robin. I actually like Red Robin, by the way. And I did them because I wanted to do, and they weren't hiring at my age. What I wanted to do, they weren't hiring at my age, and I needed the money. I didn't have the qualifications yet, and I needed money. So you did the junk work, for lack of a better term, because you didn't have the qualifications for the good stuff yet, and you needed the money. Good. Eliza, my first real job when I worked in a warehouse, and then I took it because I had little experience and needed some type of income. I didn't yet have the qualifications for what I really want to do, and I needed the money. Oh my gosh, it's like a trend. So, and then Eliza says, I look forward to the future of the life of launch shift power. Well, there's a lot of crap movies out there, so it would probably do just as well as the crap movies. Here's what you are saying. And I told you you already knew the answer. If there was going to be no external control, such as tradition or command, what incentive would actuate men in their industrial existence? For what force would they hold a society together? The answer was a plain one. Enlightened self-interest was the incentive. Universal free competition was the force. You need the money, and you want to get the skills to compete in higher levels in the future. That's what you said, and it's absolutely correct. By the way, Zamar says, my first was a front receptionist. While, yes, it required commitment and responsibility, didn't require technical skills or adequate training experience. Skills, right? Lack thereof. And so this one worked. Tyler, landscaping labor. I did this because my family had a lot of land, so I had the tools to do it. Ooh, that's clever. I have a resource. How can I exploit the availability of this resource? You should all do that. We talked about this, I think, last week. You all have resources at your disposal that others do not. You just may not understand or appreciate what they are, and you may not understand or appreciate how to make money with them. So that's really good, Tyler. Next was a production assistant for a custom canvas graphics company. Did this because it took classes and starting to get the skills, wanting to try it out, exploring a field, right? Very much. Yes, survival of the fittest. Isn't that the truth, right? Of all these. Very good, Eliza. And thank you, Tyler. Yes, excellent examples. By the way, the slide that we skipped there real quick, it just basically says society hangs by a hair. I'm not going to read all this. I'm going to tell the story, though, of this. This was a while ago. This was like 10 years ago. Lebanon fell into chaos and riots and revolution and just death and mayhem, protest, police pushback, and all that sort of stuff. You want to know what started it? Garbage cleanup slowed down. Yeah, the country fell down on its garbage cleanup responsibilities. And I'm sorry, I'm messing with my table here. And everybody lost it. Now, there's more to it than that, but not much more to it. In other words, all of society could cease to exist if there were no more electricians, if there were no more plumbers, if there were no more road makers. Society would cease to exist eventually. And so, yeah, society hanging by a hair. This is because the early economists were like, how are we going to force people to do this kind of work if we can't force them to do this kind of work? Okay. Last thing here, or not last thing. This one, here's my father. He owned he owned a bed and breakfast in Telluride, Colorado. I'll tell a few stories about my father in these lectures. He was a boomer. He was a boomer. There's the reading here, but I don't want to read the reading. I want to tell you what my father would say. My father would say, listen, I'm in Telluride, right? I'm in Telluride, Colorado. It's a ski town. And I have this inn, and I have a problem. I need somebody to make these beds. All right. Well, you, young hipster, you're a ski bum, you have a problem. You want to be able to ski every day and have some money in your pocket. So listen, it's a simple deal. I give you money and a ski pass, and you make the beds. That's it. It's a contract. And my father was a very entrepreneurial, successful man, but he just viewed it as a straight contract. It's like this isn't rocket science. You do the work I ask you to do, and I give you the pay you asked me to give you. It's that simple. And, well, everybody gets what they need. And this was a revolutionary idea, everyone. All right? So, in wrapping all this up, and I have no idea who said this, but I respect the person enough to put their name. Names are cages. Naming something limits its definition and pigeonholes its functions. I believe this so deeply. I actually have a couple of videos about Tony Stark and how Tony Stark doesn't see objects for their explicit purpose. He sees implicit uses and so forth. The point of all this is that Tyler saw a bunch of lawn care equipment, and instead of looking at it and saying, there's a bunch of crap my father gives me to do chores around the house, you look at it and go, ooh, that is a money-making proposition there. So if we open our minds to the possibilities and get past the idea of what something is exactly, we can look at its value possibly. And you guys pointed this out at the beginning when I asked if crypto and NFTs were real, and you were all brilliant. You said, just because it's not real or doesn't exist, and depending on how you define real, doesn't mean it doesn't have value. It all depends on how you look at it and how you can use it in exchanges. That was the revolution that we're talking about this module. Okay? So, there. You've done it. Good for you. Especially since we've used all but 4 minutes of the frickin' day. Good job. Thank you very much. I think we're going to be taking this, with only 4 of you here and contributing, the fact that we got so high up in the points here, that's pretty impressive. So we're going to go ahead and say points for everyone. And I deeply appreciate it. I really do. So As usual, I will stick around if you have any questions, any comments. If you want to set up a Zoom meeting and talk privately, we can do that as well. Otherwise, you're all set. Go off and make some trouble. We'll see you later. I take a picture so I know who's there. Thanks, Eliza. Really appreciate it. We'll see you tonight, Tyler. I'm going to be there. I appreciate that, Tyler. I kind of feel like that's kind of the way it is for me. I need to schedule and block specific times to get work done, and this is one of those specific times. So I can actually get a fair amount completed then. All right, well, it looks like folks are dropping off, and so I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up, and yeah, we'll see you later.